second factor is that this garden is authentic too. It was here at the time of Jesus. How do we know that? We know it because antiquities have dated this particular wine press, which you'll see on the way out on the left-hand side. They have dated it pre-Christ, just pre-Christ. So we know that at the time of Jesus, when crucifixion was taking place outside, there was a garden at that time right next door. We know what type of garden it was. It was a vineyard. Whoever owned this garden was very, very, very rich. If you owned this today, you'd be a millionaire. So that gives you an idea of the sort of value of this 1 acre garden. And so we know that two things match at the time of Christ. A place of execution and next door a garden. The Bible talks about that connection. It talks about Joseph taking the body from the place of execution and carrying it. You can't carry a dead body very far. So the garden was very, very close. In addition to that, people have occupied this garden through the years. And one section was very impressive with regards to things that were left behind here, and it was the period of the Crusaders. So in the 12th century, they came and occupied this whole garden, and they built in the garden here one of the largest cisterns in Jerusalem. Can you see that? At the bottom of this cistern, it's the size of a tennis court. It holds 1 million gallons of water. And last year we had to have it repaired, so it had to be done in a special way according to the way that the Crusaders had first made it. And I had the joy of going right to the bottom because we had to empty it. It's like a cathedral. If you've been to St. Anne's, St. Anne's has got an echo, is that right?
Yes.
This would be 4 times more echo down below. It's great for yodelers. Let me just now talk for a little while about the tomb. You can see the tomb here. The head, in other words, the head of the door, the top of the door, is twice as high as it was when it was found. So it's been extended so you can walk in. Imagine now the door being half that height. Let me talk a little bit about tombs. There are thousands of tombs in Israel. You trip over them almost. So it's not impressive to find a tomb, but tombs generally are this shape. Can you see that shape there? We call that a chamber. And a chamber normally a tomb has 2 chambers. This is the most common type of tomb that I'm explaining to you now. You'd have one chamber here, and you'd have one exactly the same behind it. So you go into the first chamber and you go on to the next chamber. Is that clear? The first chamber in any tomb is called the weeping area. It's where you lay the body, you cry over your loved one, you put ointments and spices on, and then you lay the body to rest in the second chamber. 90% of tombs in the country are like that. This tomb is not like that, and therefore it's of interest. It's of more than interest to Christians, because this tomb fits the biblical narrative perfectly. Notice now, as I show you this plan, that the first chamber is here, and the second chamber is on the right-hand side. Can you see that? Now that's exactly what the Bible says. It doesn't use the word chambers, but this is the verse that gives us the shape of the tomb. You remember when the Marys came in on resurrection morning? They came with their spices. Do you remember that? Someone told me the other day they were the first Spice Girls. They came into the first chamber, and when they came into the first chamber, the Bible is very deliberate. It says, standing on the right-hand side, were the angels who said, he is not here, he is risen. Where were the angels standing? Where the body would have been. And so we have 2 chambers. The one on the right is where the body would have been laid. This fits this tomb perfectly. So when you've been into this tomb, you'll be able to say, I know what the shape of the tomb that Jesus was laid in looked like. And therefore you'll carry an image back to your church, back to your home, of what the tomb of Jesus looked like. Now, because Jesus was the first person to be laid in the tomb, and it was a family tomb that he was laid in, he would have been laid here. His head would have been this end, his feet that end. So when you go into the tomb in a moment, look straight across, and that's where the body of Jesus would have been laid. Outside, there would have been a stone. And you can see the groove there. It wasn't this wide. This has been extended by the Crusaders. It would have been up to about here. And if you look across here, this is not the original stone, but that is an authentic stone from another tomb. Can you see the height of it? It would have been probably a little higher, a little larger than that one, but you get the idea, it rolls. This was extended by the Crusaders and turned into a cattle trough. And so that's why it's wider. But you have a rolling stone because it's practical. You can roll it closed, you can open it. And Jews up until the 5th century would open the tomb for more than one reason. They would open it to place the body in, they'd close it, leave it for a year for the body to decay, and then after a year they would open it again and they would take the bones out to store them in the special places. The Jews always traveled with the bones of their ancestors. And in the Old Testament, you've got Joseph commanding his family, when they go down to the Promised Land, don't forget my bones. And so here you have a connection between crucifixion, the garden, and the tomb. Now, when this tomb was found, there were 2 marks on it. One was on the outside, and one was on the inside. Today, when we think about symbols of Christianity, we think of 2 main ones, don't we? What are they?
The cross.
We think of the fish and we think of the cross. Those are the 2 main ones. Years ago, Christians used different symbols, and they are found all over Israel in different places of significance, and some are found in the catacombs in Rome. And the first one that was found here on the outside was an anchor. And in the book of Hebrews, Jesus is described as an anchor. This is how it reads. He is a sure and steadfast anchor of the soul. If any of you were in the Boys Brigade, looking at the men, of course, you will know that the motto of the Boys Brigade was sure and steadfast, taken from that very verse. And the idea is if you place your faith in Jesus, you're anchored for time and eternity. And it doesn't matter what comes against you, Jesus will look after you. The second sign that was found in this particular tomb was found on the inside. And this is what you'll see when you go into the tomb. On the right-hand side is the original. You can just see the outline. It's very similar to this, yes? And what happens with antiquities, if something is fading, which this was, then they cover it with a special plaster that preserves the underpart, and then they paint on top what is underneath. So that's what you're going to see when you go in. And this was very popular sign of the presence of early Christians. And this is what it stands for. This is a cross, obviously, and then in Greek it reads Jesus Christ, the Alpha and Omega, or the beginning and the end. And so we know that early Christians came to this tomb probably up until the 5th century. The other thing, just for a visual for you, this area at the time of Jesus would have had